Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be reading Dinosaur Planet. So, Dinosaur Planet is a 1978 novel written by the late Anne McCaffrey and deals with the fictional world of Ireta, where basically in the future, Earth amongst humans and amongst other alien cultures and civilizations that kind of work, cohabitually through exploration, government, and basically come upon this world that appears to be populated with creatures that very much resemble those of Earth's past, dinosaurs. And of course, it begins to beg the question of why are there dinosaurs on an alien planet, a planet that is in no way, shape, or form connected to Earth in any way, and yet it displays a very similar, if not identical, ecosystem that was present millions of years ago on Earth, displaying dinosaurs from the various eras of the Mesozoic, primarily from what I saw, the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. So in other words, you get all the classes. You get your Apatosaurus, your Tyrannosaurus Rex, Apatosaurus back then would have still been called Brontosaurus. The greatest hits of the dinosaurs of our childhood, basically. And you come to this world and you quickly realize that the story is not just about the mystery of this planet. It is also dealing with the notion of what is happening to these groups of people, these different races, when they kind of leave the confines of this more kind of this interstellar way of living, this code of conduct, this ethos that they have that kind of governs their worlds and governs their peoples and civilizations, as opposed to when they're kind of left to go astray, so to speak. And basically, what happens is essentially there is a mutiny on this expedition, on this crew, and amongst what they call the heavy worlders, which are these humans that have populated a planet with a denser gravity. So more gravity, you need more kind of strength to resist the gravity and more body mass. So the heavy worlders are kind of very indicative of their size. They're larger, they're very muscular, they're big, they're brawny. That they have that look about it. And essentially, they start being able to feed upon the local fauna and getting a taste for meat, and basically almost kind of in that moment feel very kind of liberated, because for a lot of them, their culture is as such, they're just kind of like almost like the beast of burden. That's kind of their place in this kind of society. So essentially, they lead a mutiny because in this world where they are kind of far away from the collective, as it were, they are the physically in a world where it really is might makes right. You're on a wilderness planet full of large, powerful megafauna. So on this expedition, on this crew, essentially the biggest and the strongest have the most power. It's a situation where we are reduced to kind of the basic common denominator. We are reduced to a very kind of primitive situation, in the sense that, well, who rules the tribe? Who rules the group of people? Well, the largest and physically most capable, because at the end of the day, they can assert themselves over those who are physically weaker than them, and can physically suppress any kind of resistance to them. So they have a mutiny, they rise up, and now they go from being just kind of the beast of burden to like the more physically superior, humanoids in this world. And that's kind of what the story is really about. It's not just about figuring out the mystery of this world. I mean, that is a big part of it, and I'm not going to spoil that for you, because it's kind of when you kind of figure out why the dinosaurs are there, and yes, they are dinosaurs. It's kind of an interesting concept, and something that I myself have toyed around a little bit in my own writings. Not to give myself a shameless plug or anything, but but that kind of gets almost moved to the background for a little bit in the story, and it's something that is explored in the subsequent novel, the sequel, Dinosaur Planet Survivors, which we will be talking about on this channel, rest assured. And it's more about almost like a bit of a class system. It's almost about the guise that we allow ourselves to believe in like civilized society. Like we kind of, whether we realize it or not, or whether we mean to or not, we kind of assert roles on different groups of people. There are some groups of people who feel that they are better suited for certain things for a variety of reasons. Some may be somewhat valid, some are probably, if not most, are not invalid, but these reasons are kind of ingrained in us as a society. And if you don't believe me, for those of you who live in more multicultural areas, and this isn't me picking on anyone, nor is this me saying this is right, but I'm just an observation as, someone who's lived, several places around the world and has done a significant amount of traveling. You'll see that when you go to certain large urban sprawls, look at a lot of very kind of white collar or what's the word, like upper crust, if you will, kind of in terms of economic status. And you'll see certain kinds of people living in these areas, shopping in these stores, eating at these restaurants. And then you look at those same restaurants, look at the people in the back, look at the people working the kitchens, look at the people taking out the garbage, look at the people who are building these houses, look at the people who are building these businesses. You don't see them living in these places, but you'll see them working in these places. Certain groups in terms of society are kind of designated certain roles, and a lot of this is just based on kind of age-old discrimination or prejudice, but it is essentially kind of just what we are all we kind of inherit and we're bred into, and we just kind of perpetuate, whether we mean to or not. And a lot of people, I'm not saying that all you got there are classist and racist, not at all. But it just becomes so habitual and it becomes so just a part of our lives that we don't really question it. We don't really think about it because we're not taught to think about it. We're not taught to question it. We just accept that, that's the way it is. These are the people who build the restaurant. These are the people who eat at the restaurant. It's just the way it is. And again, not saying that's a good thing, because it can lead to problems down the line, especially when that kind of system that it just kind of governs our everyday lives is kind of removed, or we are removed from it. Suddenly, this kind of instinctual feeling that we all have to play our role starts to go away, and you look around you and you realize that, why do I have to be that? We're now in a place where the playing field is not leveled, but now more skewed to my advantage. So if I'm this big hulking mass of muscle and strength, and within a certain society, I'm basically good for just defense and heavy lifting, and that's what kind of society is deemed necessary for. We're now in a world where there's just a handful of us, and this world is filled with big things with big teeth that can eat us all. So why do I have to listen to that person? The societal constructs that make it so they have sway over me are not here. It's just us. And right now, the best way to survive is to be bigger and stronger than anybody else. And hey, I'm bigger and stronger than everybody else. So if I decide, so why can't I just be in charge? If I decide to be in charge, who's going to stop me? Who can stop me? And you realize that when you remove kind of these invisible barriers, if you will, these kind of societal conditioning, you realize that a lot of what we think governs us as a society will crumble away very, very fast. And a lot of it is very superficial. It's one of the things, there's a lot of, I don't know if you guys ever watched, sorry if this sounds like I'm going off topic, but it's a great, I think, good parallel in terms of an example, where a lot of times you'll see in movies where an actor has to interact with a wild animal. This is an animal that's been trained, obviously, that's been raised by humans, but it's still a wild animal. For instance, when you see a lot of times actors have to interact with a bear. Now, this is a performance bear. It's not a bear they just grabbed out of the wild and stuck in front of a camera. This is a bear that was been raised and handled by a trainer its whole life, but it's still a bear. It's not a domesticated animal. And a lot of times they'll put a lot of times now they just CGI the bear in. But when they actually have the bear on set with the actor, a lot of times they'll have like a little wire in between them. It's so thin that the camera can't pick it up, and even if it does, they can now just digitally remove it in post-production. But the bear has been trained to not cross that wire. It knows it can't, it can, but it knows it can't. So it's this illusion of a bear. It's this illusion of control. But if the bear wanted to, it's a little piece of fishing wire. This, massive Kodiak bear could just walk through it and devour the actor if they so wanted to. But they have been kind of conditioned that when that wire's there, I can't go past that. Even though they can, but they won't. It's a conditioning. You have been trained, the bear has been trained not to do that, even though physically it can. The heavy worlders and all these different groups and factions have been trained and conditioned to kind of fit the role. But once they're kind of removed from the conditioning, that wire, that little piece of fishing wire suddenly looks to them exactly like what it is. This non-barrier, this thing that, quite honestly, they can just go through without any resistance, and doing so can do whatever they want. And that's what the story is about. It is perhaps our ignorance to a lot of the kind of social constraints that we put on ourselves, that we're are the result of kind of outdated prejudices, unfortunately. And that really we're kind of inheriting in a lot of ways the sins of our forebears, and that they put them in place due to their own kind of prejudices and ignorances, and that we're essentially just in an age of enlightenment where we're so much more smarter than that. We're still perpetuating it, not because we think it's right or because we want to, but because we literally just don't know any better not to. It's just there. It's just, it's like, it's always been that way. Why would I think? And we have to really force ourselves to look at society and be like, okay, is this the way it should be? Because what are the potential ramifications for that? What are the ramifications for keeping a certain group of people in a box, so to speak, and not allowing them the same opportunities as other groups of people? What happens if the situation changes where that which we think divides us disappears? How are they going to react? Are they going to be angry? Are they going to be frustrated? Are they going to get this taste of this level of freedom that they've never had before? And because of that, they might abuse it because they've never grown up with it. They don't know what to do with it. Just like we don't know any better not to not do that. Oh, wow. They don't know. When you taste something, when you eat something for the first time you never had before and you put it in your mouth and it tastes delicious, the best thing you ever taste, what's your first thing? I'm going to eat more of it because it's so good. Your first thought is like, well, it was good, but maybe I should pace myself because, I don't want to get a tummy ache. No, you start shoveling it down your mouth because it's the greatest thing you've ever tasted, right? What happens when people who've never had certain amounts of freedom suddenly get that freedom? I'm not saying, everyone's going to run wild, but in a situation where you don't have Big Brother looking over your shoulder, or you don't have a lot of the kind of societal norms in place, and you realize that, man, I could get away with something right now, and I could get away with it. What happens? And a lot of it's because, they've never had that freedom. They've been kept in a box. So I kind of took away from this story. On the surface, it's a cool science fiction story about, hey, it's an alien planet with dinosaurs. Sweet. I'm not going to lie, that's what initially hooked me to the story. But digging deeper, you realize that there's more to it. And like all really great science fiction, it's more of a mirror on ourselves. It talks more about us as a people and kind of how we are, using the science fiction element as more of a larger metaphor and kind of just our ignorance to ourselves. And it's a very kind of human story because of that. So for that reason, I recommend Dinosaur Planet. So, have you read Dinosaur Planet? If you're familiar with Anne McCaffrey's work, it's kind of one of her more notable titles. If you have not, as always, I will put a link in the description section below. You can go pick it up, check it out, give it a read, come back, give me some of your thoughts. Again, this whole message is not very, very heavy-handed. This is more or less my takeaway from it, and I kind of thought that was really interesting that there was kind of this narrative element of people choosing to do something different because perhaps they've never had the option to do it before. And in fact, if it is perhaps because they didn't have the option, that's really the problem. It's like this quest for power maybe derived from the fact that maybe they never really felt they had power. Or, they were the big, strong people, But maybe, despite being physically superior in a lot of ways, that maybe they felt they never really had power over their own lives. That maybe they always felt like there was somebody else dictating for them how to live, how to use their strength. Their strength was theirs, but it wasn't theirs to use as maybe they always saw fit. So it's an interesting kind of story that you can kind of dig into and kind of maybe analyze a little bit more. Which again, like I said, that's science fiction at its best. So, but anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.